Hello, my lovelies. If you can hear me, please hit a 1 in the comment so I know whether or not I am in there. Let me write that now. Hi. Can you guys hear me? Hit the 1 if you can hear me, please. Let me see. I'm not muted or anything. Okay. Hello, Serendipity. Okay, great. YouTube Streets hears me. Okay, cool. Let me see if there's anything in here that I wanted to address beforehand. Let's see. Yeah, Barry makes people's skin crawl for sure. And I got a question from Sonny asking, CM said he was headed to testify. Was it for LS? And I don't think so. As from any of the reports that I got back, he didn't testify. Mike King did. And then I see that people are asking about what my other channel is because my hubby is moderating using the thing for the other channel, which is Jules Wolf Dark Tales, and it's just a story channel and true crime stories. And let's see. Oh, hi, hubby. I see he said hi, Jules, and hello to all of you awesome people. Thank you very much. Oh, Reichardt's back. And Renee, thank you everybody for being here. And we will just get right into this. First off, I figured that we will start, because this theme of this one is all things Barry, and what is Barry right now is partially Linda Stanley's hearing that she just had. So we'll talk about her hearing, and then we'll talk about his lawsuit, and I'll answer questions to the best of my knowledge, as well as the fact that I do believe that Barry will get arrested again. And I do believe that he will be tried for the murder of Suzanne. And I believe he will be found guilty. And, those are all my beliefs, in my opinion. And it's based on the evidence and, the evidence, including Barry's own words, which are going to come back and bite him pretty much, and his actions. And just when you put the whole thing together, there are way too many coincidences that make him look guilty for them to just be coincidences. And let's see. First off, I'm going to put this up. First thing is the Mountain Mail did an article, their summary of Linda Stanley's disciplinary hearing. And here's lovely Linda. And it says, embattled 11th Judicial District Attorney Linda Stanley took the stand on June 18th to testify in her own defense during a professional disciplinary hearing in Denver. And state regulators have accused Stanley, the sitting elected district attorney for Chaffee, Custer, Fremont, and Park counties, of violating 7 rules of professional conduct for attorneys. She could lose her license to practice law if presiding judge Byron Large and 2 hearing board members sustain the allegations of professional misconduct against her. Stanley is accused of making inappropriate comments to members of the media and on a YouTube crime show when she prosecuted Barry Morphew for the murder of his wife in 2020, as well as failing to capably lead the district attorney's office and attempting to retaliate against the judge presiding over the Morphew case, among other misconduct. And we'll get into that one a little bit more later. And the Office of Attorney Regulation Counsel, which handles attorney discipline for professional misconduct, brought the allegations against Stanley in October, and the disciplinary case proceeded all the way to a 2-week public hearing, which is highly unusual for a sitting district attorney. Yeah, tell me about it. In her testimony, June 18th, Stanley defended her comments on the YouTube show Profiling Evil as appropriate and denied state attorney's allegations that her mere appearance on the show implied Morphew was guilty or evil. No, absolutely not, she said on the stand. That is not why the show was named that. So no, I'm not saying anyone was evil. She also testified that comments she subsequently wrote on the YouTube video about the strength of the evidence in the Morphew case were written in a personal capacity, not professional. Obviously, I have my personal photo up there, not a district attorney photo, she said of the comments. I am responding as a person, not as a district attorney. So long as you use your personal picture, you can say whatever you need to say to defend yourself in the Barry Morphew case, questioned Aaron Christofko with the Office of Attorney Regulation Counsel. I never said that, Stanley responded. Stanley charged Morphew with murder in 2021, a year after his wife, Suzanne Morphew, 49, disappeared from the family's Chaffee County home on May 10th, 2020. Stanley dropped all charges against Morphew in 2022 after her office was sanctioned for discovery violations. And they didn't mention the fact that it was dropped without prejudice, meaning that they can refile charges against him. Anyway, Barry Morphew maintained his innocence and is not facing any charges in connection with his wife's death. And I'd like to add, at this time, anyway, this article does not say that, lawyers from the Office of Attorney Regulation Counsel laid blame for the failed prosecution on Stanley's poor leadership during her disciplinary hearing. On June 18th, she defended her management style in court, saying that she did not need to specifically designate a lead prosecutor in the Morphew case. Your implication, I needed to crown somebody with the title of lead prosecutor in order for this case to go okay, doesn't hold water, she testified in response to questions from Christofko. They knew what their jobs were. I knew what their jobs were, and there was never any confusion, which, I think that there's a lot of different opinions on that got testified to. During the at times heated testimony, Stanley repeatedly said she was uncomfortable answering questions about her prosecution of Morphew, noting that prosecutors may refile the charges against Morphew after his wife's body was discovered in a shallow grave near Moffat in September. But when asked several times about the theory of the case, she said prosecutors initially believed Morphew used a gun to shoot a tranquilizer dart at his wife, but said that they later believed no gun was used. A coroner has determined Suzanne Morphew's death to be a homicide, finding she died with a cocktail of animal tranquilizers in her body. The investigation into Suzanne's killing is now being handled by 12th Judicial District Attorney Ann Kelly, since her body was found in that jurisdiction. The 3-member disciplinary hearing board will consider the evidence and testimony presented in the trial-like proceeding and issue a written ruling at a later date that will find whether the allegations against Stanley are substantiated, and if so, what sanctions she'll face. The most severe sanction would be disbarment. And then after this, I will put up another article, this one by a reporter that I trust and know, I know through Twitter anyway, and we'll go over her article. I feel that the Mountain Mail article might have a bit of a slant to it, just like a lot of the media outlets have had their own view. I know that they say that they're impartial and that they're just reporting the news, but a lot of times they seem more like publicity pieces for Barry Morphew or his legal team. And, that's a bit concerning. And that was the case also with this Jordan Hedberg, whatever. He is the owner and a writer for the Wet Mountain Tribune. And he did an article which I objected to him because he was stating that basically I was in a conspiracy with Linda Stanley to conspire against the judge or whatever. And he posted things that were not true. And I called him on it, and then he said that he got it all from the legal proceeding, but I scoured the legal proceeding, and what he wrote is not in the legal proceeding. What he wrote is in a Google Doc that was written by that fellow Tom that I have told you guys about, my stalker. He's a bunch of no good for a lot of different people for who knows how many different reasons. And anyway, the wording that was used by this Hedberg, whatever guy, is the exact wording that Tom used. So I think there's some bias there, and you got to really look at things when they come out and see see what's what and what different people's motivations are, and who they have their connections with and things like that. Anyway, enough soapbox, and on to the other article. And that one is Carol McKinley. And let me make sure, I got to go back over here and see. And no, I didn't put it up on the stage. There, I put it on the stage. Now I go over to it. And Carol McKinley is with the Denver Gazette, and she attended the hearing. I'm not sure whether she was there for the entire time or not, but she's done this summary. And Carol McKinley, and here we see Linda Stanley, and I'm guessing that might be one of the judges or something. Let's see, what does it say? Linda Stanley testified for 2 hours during her disciplinary hearing on Tuesday. She is facing disbarment, public or private censure, suspension, or dismissal of all charges. So lots of things can happen. Anyway, either the district attorney who oversaw the Barry Morphew alleged murder case was so loose-lipped with the press that she sunk the case, or she had a First Amendment right to speak about certain aspects of the investigation. If you go down this route, you are threatening First Amendment liberties, said Linda Stanley's attorney, Steve Jensen, during his closing arguments in her disciplinary hearing on Friday. This is scary stuff indeed. Jensen accused the arm of the Colorado Supreme Court that is overseeing Stanley's case of being a regulatory bureaucracy, pointing out that she is not going to run again. She has given up her career, Jensen said, but Office of Attorney Regulation Counsel lawyer Aaron Christofko argued that Stanley had no remorse for causing 2 first-degree murder cases to circle the drain. She asked the 3-person panel who listened to the hearing to disbar Stanley. The 9-day hearing over 2 weeks in Denver was similar to a trial with witnesses and competing sides, except there was no jury. Stanley's fate will be decided by a 3-person board, including a presiding judge, an attorney, and a regular citizen. And then talking with YouTubers, Christofko hammered home the point that Stanley appeared on a YouTube show called Profiling Evil 3 times. Testimony from prosecutorial experts indicated that the fact that Stanley spoke on a show called Profiling Evil caused problems because it implied that Barry Morphew was evil, which Christofko said was basic stuff learned in DA school. Stanley is also accused of violating rules for public comments she made about an unrelated fatal child abuse case in which she said a man accused of killing his girlfriend's child agreed to be a babysitter so he could get laid. Charges against the Colorado man accused of killing the baby were dismissed because those comments were deemed prejudicial to a potential jury. Stanley testified that she believed her comments to a KRDO reporter regarding the child abuse case were off the record. Christofko said that Stanley constantly missed discovery deadlines and was a poor leader who caused massive confusion among her prosecutorial team. On the other hand, Stanley and 2 of her prosecutors testified that finding and retaining staff in rural jurisdictions with few resources was a challenge. Stanley, who is the sitting 11th Judicial District Attorney until January of 2025, could be disbarred publicly or privately censured, suspended, or the complaints against her could be dismissed. It will be at least 56 days before a decision is made. The OARC brought the charges against Stanley after it discovered enough evidence to possibly support ethical violations. At least 5 complaints were filed against Stanley, including one by the Fremont County Sheriff, one by a concerned citizen who participated in the search for missing mom Suzanne Morphew, and one by Morphew's defense attorney, Iris Eiton. Another of those complaints was filed by the judge, Ramsey Lama, who presided over the failed case in its final months. The final complaint was made by the Colorado District Attorney's Council, a state prosecutor's professional group. It was revealed during the hearings. A 9-day OARC hearing is rare. The last district attorney to be called into question was Alonzo Payne, who agreed to be disbarred without a hearing and agreed that he was not ready to handle the position. Ironically, the Morphew case is now in the hands of Payne's replacement, Ann Kelly. She has had regular conversations with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, which is now overseeing the investigation. And then it goes to the unsolved Morphew case. Suzanne Morphew, 49, went missing from her remote mountain home about a 15-minute drive west of Salida sometime on May 9th or 10th in 2020. Thousands of people turned out to look for her on horseback, on foot, and in the streams and rivers. Barry Morphew was arrested nearly a year later on May 5th, 2021, on suspicion of first-degree murder and tampering with physical evidence in her disappearance. Then Judge Ramsey Lama agreed to dismiss all charges against Barry Morphew without prejudice just 9 days before he was to stand trial in connection with the first-degree murder of his wife and mother of their 2 daughters. Without prejudice means that prosecutors can refile charges in the future. Suzanne Morphew's remains were found in September, 3 years after she went missing. No new charges have been filed, and the investigation is ongoing. And Stanley's future. The hearing's witnesses included 2 who worked on the Morphew case and both of her one-time number 2 prosecutors, Jeff Lindsay, who resigned halfway through the case, and Mark Hurlbert, who was brought in before the August 2021 evidentiary hearing, testified against her. Stanley's former lead investigator, the former judge who dismissed the case in April 2022, and a podcaster to whom she made extrajudicial statements, and the host of the podcast Profiling Evil, were also witnesses. And as far as I know, the podcaster and all that were all Mike King, but maybe CM was there too. I don't know. I never got any notification from anybody that had been at the trial that they didn't say that he was there. They only mentioned Mike King. Anyway, former U.S. Attorney and Attorney General John Suthers and former Boulder District Attorney Stan Garnett took the stand to condemn Stanley's prosecutorial ethics. The problem with the Morphew case, Garnett testified, was the leadership, the lack of focus, and the lack of accountability. Testimony in the hearing was often tedious, but being subpoenaed gave law enforcement officers who had never spoken publicly about the Morphew case a chance to reveal what was happening behind the scenes. Some of them said that they didn't know who was in charge. Christofsko said that the purpose of the hearing was to protect the integrity of the legal profession. Jensen countered that if Stanley harmed the 2 cases, she may have been negligent, but her actions were not intentional. These were negligent and not intentional violations, he argued. The OARC hearing board is not expected to decide on Stanley's fate for at least 56 days. And so there we have it. That's the summary of what went on. And basically, I've also seen some tweets that were handed to me, etc., that let me know that people who were in the courtroom, who included some people that have me blocked on Twitter, but people that aren't blocked screenshotted and sent it to me so I could see, because they had been in the courtroom also. And basically they were saying that when Ramsey Lama testified, he didn't like run down any other names or anything. And he did say that, I'm going to wait and get the transcripts on what he said, actually, because if he said some wrong things, he could get himself in a lot of trouble from what he testified to. Anyway, so we've got all that going on. I heard that Linda Stanley at some times got angry and was kind of like shouting on the stand. I heard that there were tears as well. And did find out that the defense for Linda Stanley is stating that this was negligence on her part, not an intentional thing, which will spill over onto the Morphew lawsuit thing. And so then we'll peek at what her charges were. I mean, I went through the whole document, and we'll just look and we'll see that the first claim against Linda Stanley is obviously a lawyer shall act with reasonable diligence and promptness, which she did not do. We know that documents and stuff were continually being, and not just in the Morphew case either. But was it on purpose, or is it just because she's a dummy? Claim 2, pre-trial publicity. And this one is one that mentioned that she exchanged Facebook Messenger messages with me, and that in response to my question about whether Morphew might flee, respondent stated possibly. And now that I look back on this and everything, and the answer that she gave, it's kind of a non-answer. What she tells me is possibly. That's not a yes. That's not a no. And in June 2021, respondent texted Mike King in response to a Barry Morphew video, and she said, "We got him. No worries." So that's kind of ambiguous, whether they're going to decide that's spilling the beans, or whether that's just not something that would be harming a case at all, because of course there's going to be some assumptions that the general public gets when somebody's been arrested and charged with something. So then we get to claim 3, prosecutors' extrajudicial comments, and it says again, wait, did I just read that one? Claim 2. Oh, okay. That's both claim 2 and claim 3 are regarding those comments and the fact that she was on Profiling Evil. And so we'll just have to wait and see what they decide about that. And then claim 4 is responsibilities of a supervisory lawyer. And basically it's saying that she wasn't providing proper leadership to the people under her, which I think they were probably able to prove. But also, I don't know whether they're going to be able to prove that she purposely wasn't leading them well. We'll just have to see what the nuances of all this are, because I'm not an attorney. Yeah, I'm going to get to the Barry Morphew lawsuit after this, Danielle. Right now, I'm just reading what the state of Colorado had against Linda Stanley. Claim 5 was the attempt to violate the rules of professional conduct and conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice. And it's mentioning about how her statements have become more brazen, and it's bringing up that case where the guy that killed the baby isn't going to be he's not going to trial or anything because Linda was talking smack about him with Sean Rice, who is a television reporter, and it was recorded, and Linda Stanley thought it was off the record because it was after the main interview, but she was talking to a reporter and she still had a microphone on her. So don't know how that's going to go. And claim 6 is pretrial publicity again, and this one is about the abuse case. And then claim 7 is prosecutors' extrajudicial comments, and these are also about her interviews regarding the other cases. And so I know that the stuff on Barry Morphew's case, his $15 million lawsuit, is kind of worded that things were done to him on purpose, and so I'm not sure, because like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I have a feeling that some of his lawsuit is going to go bye-bye if it is determined that Linda Stanley didn't do these things on purpose, because it's not saying that his lawsuit isn't saying negligence. His lawsuit is saying on purpose. Anyway, what's going on with his lawsuit right now is it's still at a standstill with a whole bunch of motions to dismiss. There's been a few people that have been dismissed from it, but nothing more has happened on the legal front with it. And now we'll go and dip into it. And this whole stack, that is Barry's lawsuit. And so I'll just try to summarize it as best as possible. The first 14 pages are just kind of introducing and saying who is suing, but a bunch of the pages are no longer important because they are regarding a couple of people whose Barry agreed to dismiss against them when they filed their their objections to his thing, and they went and cited law. It's called doing case law, where you find a case that's similar and you quote it and what happened in it. And so in some of this, I was surprised that Iris didn't already know that these people couldn't be included in the suit. But anyway, a few people were taken off the suit for that. And one thing that's kind of sticks out to me is that a lot of this too is redundant, where she just repeats the same thing over again for each individual person and stuff like that. So even though it's 185 pages, it's not really 185 pages worth of allegations. Anyway, one thing that it keeps saying is each of the defendant's acts or omissions were conducted within the scope of their official duties or employment, which makes me wonder, because it seems that if they're doing everything in the scope of their position, doesn't that mean that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? So we'll just have to see on that. And then page 14 are a couple little tidbits that starting with line 55. On May 10th, 2020, Barry Morphew, who owned a landscaping business, went to Broomfield, a Denver, Colorado suburb, to prepare for a previously contracted landscaping job to commence on May 11th, 2020. Barry last saw Suzanne in their bed sleeping around 5 a.m. on May 10th, 2020, before he left to drive to Broomfield. And the daughters, Mallory and Macy, were on a road trip in Utah and planned to get home on May 10th or May 11th. And on May 10th, 2020, Barry Morphew and Mallory and Macy had been calling and texting Suzanne's phone numerous times, but she did not answer. At approximately 3 p.m. on May 10th, 2020, Barry Morphew called a neighbor to go to the Morphew home and look for Suzanne because he and his daughters had been unable to reach her. The neighbor drove to the Morphew home and were unable to find Suzanne. They also did not see her mountain bike that she rode almost daily. Okay, this has now become a legal stance. This has, it is now Barry's testimony because it's on this document and it's been put out there that is the case. And when his lawsuit resumes, when it goes to court, they have the right to depose him, to question him, and if his story changes, he has got some big trouble. And page 15, at approximately 5:30, Barry asked the neighbors to call the authorities while he packed up his things and drove from Brookfield to their home. And I will be checking this against the arrest affidavit in order to see whether that matches what other people have testified to. Barry arrived from Broomfield 2.5 hours later and wanted to help search for Suzanne. That's interesting, figure out the times and such. Barry assisted law enforcement in finding an article of Suzanne's clothing from Suzanne's closet to use in a search for Suzanne. And we know that what was used was biking clothing, even though he was saying that she had disappeared while riding a bike. And then we know that what she was found with is not that. So that'll be interesting. And then it gets to the part about the search dog. Doug Spence gave the article of clothing provided by Barry to his scent dog Roscoe to smell Suzanne's scent, who was then deployed to the area near where Suzanne's bike was found. Roscoe alerted to Suzanne's scent and followed it down to a rushing river where Suzanne's scent then disappeared. And then it says this fact was not disclosed in the arrest affidavit. But anyway, it's interesting because a lot of people go and say that Roscoe was alerting that she crossed the river or whatever, but here they are themselves saying that Roscoe was not saying she crossed the river or anything. But anyway, then line 75, it says Suzanne was never found, and she repeats that over and over and over again in this document. And we know that things have changed now. Suzanne's been found since this was filed. And then it goes on May 13th, 2020, defendant Scott Himshoot, a Chaffee County Sheriff's deputy, found Suzanne's bike helmet approximately 0.84 miles northwest of the site the bicycle was found, approximately 10 meters south of Highway 50 and 1.52 miles from the Morphew's residence. Law enforcement suspected foul play and immediately targeted Barry Morphew as the perpetrator. And let me peek at that first one again because I don't remember if... Oh, okay. Anyway, I don't think that it was really a stretch for them to suspect Barry because of a lot of this is like, what the anyway, line 80, the defendant's theory, as presented in the prosecution, was that while Barry Morphew was at work on a job site on the morning of May 9th, 2020, Suzanne Morphew was at home communicating on her telephone with her secret out-of-state lover. And I don't know why they had to, she just kind of fluffed to try to get emotions going to whoever's reading this, because they could have just said Suzanne was on. Whatever. Anyway, Suzanne used WhatsApp and LinkedIn phone apps she installed on her phone to communicate with her lover. For approximately 2 years prior to her disappearance, Suzanne had a secret romantic affair with Jeff Libler, a man she knew from her high school in Indiana. Suzanne reconnected with Libler on Facebook. Libler lived in Michigan with his wife and children, who did not know about the affair. Except for we know that one of them did know, came across, and the daughter and his brother both spoke to him, and he said that he would stop talking to Suzanne. Anyway, over a period of a year and a half preceding Suzanne's disappearance, Suzanne and Libler would meet each other in different cities without the knowledge of their spouses, relatives, children, or closest friends. And in early 2021, defendants Grusing and Harris told Barry about Suzanne's affair. But Grusing and Harris are no longer defendants in this, because they were able to do a very good argument of why they shouldn't be, and Barry dropped it. Anyway, it's basically complaining about things that were written in the affidavit, the arrest affidavit, which some of it we all know was pretty far-fetched and crazy, like saying that it showed them, that him chasing her and stuff like that. But they had somebody on the stand testifying that didn't really know how to read it. The expert wasn't available. He'd been deployed. So they were not very well prepared. Anyway, then we go, besides them complaining about the way that it was written, here we go. The defendant theorized that on May 9th, 2020, Barry arrived home from work around 2:30 p.m., chased Suzanne around the house, killed her using tranquilizer serum in a dart shot by a gun, disposed of her body and all evidence of the crime, and then created an alibi by going to Broomfield the next day, Sunday, May 10th, 2020. And I think that probably in some way or part is still a theory, because she did have that tranquilizer in her body. They just don't think it was administered with a gun. And then one of their complaints is about when defendant Himshoot found the plastic cap to what he believed to be a needle cover to a syringe by itself at the bottom of the empty clothes dryer. And they're complaining because sometimes it was called a dart cap and sometimes a needle cover, etc. And it's we'll find out later how this works into the current case that's being worked on. Anyway, almost all of Barry's interactions with the defendant officers were secretly tape recorded, is what she's got down here as a complaint. And the thing is, there's no such thing as secretly tape recorded. This is a state where only one party involved in a conversation needs to be knowledgeable that it's being recorded. There's no what is it, presumption? There's no presumption of privacy. Whatever, you just always assume you're being recorded in this state. And then another complaint is Barry's statements with the defendant officers were also secretly recorded. And then 97, the defendants never got the confession from Barry that they were hoping for. I don't know. Okay. um, yeah, I'm making fun of her a little bit because there's a lot of fluff and filler in here that didn't really need to be in here. But to be fair to her, there was also a lot of fluff and filler in the original arrest affidavit that didn't need to be in there either. And in case you're just popping in, no, I don't think that it was wrong to arrest Barry. I just think that they should have waited a little while and got all their ducks in a row first. And I think that he's going to be arrested again, and that they're being very careful this time to make sure that they've got everything arranged. Anyway, then they go and talk about the DNA, and she's making a big deal about the DNA, but we know that, oh, and I wrote on this one, she has now, because it was another statement of Suzanne has still not been found. Anyway, they talk a lot about the CODIS match, but we know now that the CODIS match didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't even exactly a match. Anybody that's done 23andMe or Ancestry.com know that you get back from your DNA results, all these like sixth cousins and things like that. And all that this said was that the DNA was related to the person that was involved in those different essays and stuff in Arizona. So, and then they do a lot of complaint about the affidavit, and let's see, on page 31 it says the district attorney's office all believe that Suzanne's Range Rover was used in the commission of a criminal offense connected to the disappearance of Suzanne Morphew. And I'm wondering what all that they found out since then, because that, of course, wasn't available before the preliminary proof evident or whatever it was called hearing. The stuff on the Range Rover hadn't come back yet. And then we get to what it says about the something more that they're complaining about the DNA is the arrest affidavit states that Mallory Morphew was a low-level contributor to a DNA sample found on a dart box found in the garage. The affidavit failed to include anyone else as a DNA contributor to the dart in the box found in the garage. This was false and incomplete. There was another potential contributor, Deputy Scott Himshoot, who was an equally likely low-level contributor according to laboratory reports. And so that tells us that what? We know that Mallory's DNA was on the box, that the cop's DNA was on the box. And if they're saying that Barry's wasn't, I would think that is a bit more suspicious, because they were Barry's darts, and if his DNA isn't on them, why is his DNA not in all these places that they're complaining about? It's kind of weird that his DNA wouldn't be on his possessions or but that's just me, right? And then it goes on to about the cast reports and the way that there was the drift and such. Let's see. Then we get to page 45 where they say they take something from the affidavit and they say about May 9th to the 10th. And it's talking about Barry's phone, and they're saying it's misleading and all that about the GPS. And all this, and they're talking about falsehoods about Barry's phone, and I think they've currently got a lot more to worry about than that stuff. But we also know that AK and Martin have gone over this data, so I'm not really going to touch on the telematics or anything, because I have some other videos where I was interviewing Martin and he was explaining some of that. So anyway, they were complaining a bit, and then we get to they say that there were false and misleading statements about Suzanne's phone, computer, and Facebook account. Defendants Cahill, Lindsay, Walker, and Stanley purposely omitted material exculpatory facts from and made false statements in the arrest affidavit concerning Suzanne's phone activity on May 9th and 10th, 2020. In the summer of 2020, defendants Walker, Cahill, Burgess, Julian, Rorick, Graham, Lindsay, Stanley, and Grusing, and other named and or unnamed, but a few of those have been dropped now. Anyway, co-conspirators whose identities are not yet known. See, she keeps putting in there conspirators and co-conspirators. Well, if it is found that stuff is negligent, is that still going to be considered a conspiracy? If it's negligence rather than a plot or a plan. And Cindy Green says, will there be a potential arrest of Barry, do you think? And yes, I do think so. I think that the evidence that we do have, and from the previous arrest, and the evidence of Barry's actions since then, and Suzanne being found and where she was found, and what was with her when she was found, and the fact that the BAM was in her bones. Yeah, I believe that Barry's basically done for, in my opinion. Anyway, they say that it was false about her phone and computer, because they say that the phone and computer showed activity long after the time in the arrest affidavit that states that Suzanne was killed. According to the arrest affidavit, defendants claim that Suzanne was killed on May 9th, 2020 at approximately 2:45 p.m. The cast report documented that Suzanne's phone was making and or receiving calls late in the evening of May 9th, 2020 and the early morning hours of May 10th. But we have got no one coming forward saying that they had any contact with Suzanne herself at those times. So that doesn't prove anything. Whether Suzanne's phone did anything or not doesn't say who used the phone. Anyway, and then she goes on a big thing about Jeff Libler and saying that Jeff Libler need to have been ruled out. And, I don't know how much they investigated him, but they do say that they ruled him out as a possibility. And, oh, thank you so much, CryptoZoo. That's sweet. And then pages 57 to 98, what was important in here. The arrest affidavit, citing only a portion of Suzanne's LinkedIn search warrant return, states Suzanne did not respond to Libler's return messages at 2:44 and 2:46 p.m. The arrest affidavit also states that the lack of phone activity for Suzanne after 2:30 p.m. on May 9th, 2020 is out of the norm for her typical behavior and an abrupt, and she italicized, abrupt end following her 59 communications with Jeff Libler that morning and afternoon. And it says that's from the arrest affidavit, page 126. The emphasis is added. And then it says those statements are false because Suzanne's phone did show activity late on May 9th and early on May 20th. And then I am questioning whether that's a typo, because she had been saying May 10th. And those statements are purposely misleading as they imply that the communication was abruptly terminated by Suzanne. And then she says it was not abrupt and not terminated by Suzanne. She says Jeff Libler sent a text via LinkedIn to Suzanne at 2:39 p.m. on May 10th, 2020, which I also think is a typo. I have a big question mark on that. Ending their communications that day because his family arrived home and he was no longer alone. And I remember that being testified to during the presumption, whatever, the hearing, and it was not the 10th. It was, I believe, the 9th, and he said, my gang is here or something like that about the kids arriving home or something. So anyway, this is a document that she has filed to the courts, and this is, she's got two things wrong right on this page where, she is claiming false things, and they might be innocent typos, but still, you're supposed to check your stuff, right? And another complaint is Suzanne's computer, and it says the forensic report showed that Suzanne was on password protected sites to which only she would have had access. The report showed that Suzanne was on her private Pinterest account late into the night on May 9th, 2020, many hours after the arrest affidavit stated that she had been killed. I'd like to say that if she never logged out, if she didn't get a chance to log out, wouldn't that also be a possibility about how somebody would be on her account? Would be if she didn't log out and it was just there and open, So that doesn't really prove anything. And then Suzanne's Facebook, the rest of it, David states that 11:14 a.m. on May 9th, 2020, Suzanne received a message from Facebook on her phone stating that her password had been reset. And then it says, defendants who authored the arrest affidavit also stated that Barry pretended to be Suzanne when he logged onto her Facebook account and initiated friend requests with 23 people, 20 males and 3 females. And these statements are false, misleading, and omit material information. And the records from Suzanne's Facebook account reveal that Suzanne changed her password on Friday night, May 8th, 2020, and then initiated some Facebook friend requests. The records from Suzanne's Facebook account also reveal that on May 9th, 2020, Suzanne logged into Facebook at 11:11 a.m., changed her password again at 11:18, and logged off of Facebook at 11:23 a.m. Suzanne could not have changed her password on the morning of May 9th unless she knew the current password, which she had changed the night of May 8th. Unless she's not the one that changed it the night of May 8th. So, I'm not seeing that this stuff is really proving anything. And, I don't know whether this is, what this is they're trying to make they're trying to say that, this conclusively shows that they did things wrong on purpose in the arrest affidavit, just to go get Barry. And so it says conclusion, the numerous false and misleading statements described above related to Suzanne's phone, computer, and Facebook in the arrest affidavit and the omissions of exculpatory facts are incorporated by reference. The above false and misleading information and omitted exculpatory information about phone, computer, and Facebook were material to finding of probable cause. The omission of the exculpatory facts, as described above and throughout the complaint about phone, computer, and Facebook, was material to finding of probable cause. Had the above false and misleading information about tranquilizers been omitted and the exculpatory information about phone, computer, and Facebook been included, it would have vitiated and diluted probable cause singularly and in combination with the other misconduct described in this complaint. So anyway, that what I just read is the same thing that it says after everything that they complain about. And basically what it's saying is it's saying that the judge, they're assuming that the judge would have decided not to charge Barry if the arrest affidavit hadn't been written the way it was. But that's kind of a little bit of a stretch. And also and then I got a question mark over here because it says Suzanne's phone was both receiving and sending calls in the early morning hours of May 10th, 2020. And that's her statement. And I haven't seen anything that tells me that that's the case. But anyway, then they complain about the telematics, and then they say falsehoods and omissions about tranquilizer chemicals, gun, and needle cap. And the affidavit alleges that Barry killed Suzanne by means of an animal tranquilizer shot from a tranquilizer gun. The defendants who authored the arrest referred to tranquilizer dart evidence. And it says Barry Morphew is an avid hunter. Barry and Suzanne lived in Indiana since birth and owned a deer farm there. Barry, Suzanne, Mallory, and Macy moved to Colorado around 2018. When Barry owned the deer farm, he obtained deer tranquilizers to manage the large herd on the property. When questioned by defendants Grusing and Harris, Barry denied harming Suzanne and certainly denied tranquilizing her. The defendants authorizing this arrest affidavit suggested that his denial was an indicator of a guilty conscience because, you see, he offered that information to them. He told them he didn't trank her, but they didn't ask him whether he tranked her or not. And then they go and say, in that respect, they stated Barry blamed the deer for why his tranquilizer gun was used and to explain the needle sheath recovered in the dryer and the firing of a gun, the 22 gun, blah, blah, blah. And then says all these statements were false and misleading. Furthermore, the arrest affidavit states by around 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, May 9th, it had become clear that Barry could not control Suzanne's insistence on leaving him, and he resorted to something he has done his entire life, hunt and control Suzanne like he had hunted and controlled animals. And this inflammatory, baseless statement had no grounding in fact. It was misleading, intentionally designed to provoke passion, and false. And pot kettle, because she's also does things intentionally to provoke passion, etc. But was this stuff maliciously done? And and now we know that she had BAM in her system, so that's kind of more interesting. And then they go and talk about those things, and they talk about the DNA on the needle cover, and that's part of their complaints against everybody for the lawsuit. And so they're saying that by using all of that information that they wrote, that I guess they're trying to say that it was maliciously done, lies, the conspiracy that they came up with all of this, and on purpose we're going after them. But they're going to have to prove that these people that they're suing intentionally did this conspiracy that they're speaking about to go after Barry, and that they intentionally wrote these things, made these conclusions from this evidence, like in a malicious fashion or something. And Suzanne's bike helmet in the timeline. The arrest affidavit states Suzanne's bicycle and helmet were discarded before Barry left town in the early morning hours of May 10th, 2020. The defendants who authored the arrest affidavit knew that this statement in the arrest affidavit was not a fact, but a theory. There's absolutely no evidence when the bicycle and helmet were discarded. However, the defendants who authored the arrest affidavit presented it as a fact. Well, it, I guess, I don't know, because I mean, they were discarded. Well, obviously they were discarded before Barry went to Broomfield, because he was in Broomfield when they were found. So, well, when the bike was. Anyway, this is the fun one. Barry's work trip to Broomfield. The affidavit also states that on May 10th, 2020, Barry had to suddenly leave for a job in Broomfield. The affidavit, which is from page 125 of the arrest affidavit. The affidavit further states that he created an alibi for her disappearance. And the arrest affidavit adds, per his alibi, to be out of town for an emergency job in Broomfield. And, I'm loving this because of some facts that have come to light. Anyway, the inference from this false statement is that there was no job, and or that Barry created this job as a last-minute cover-up. Yeah, he pretty much did. It says those statements are false, as is the inference that they intended to make. Defendants authoring the arrest evidence knew they were false. And how would they know they were false, when, especially since they were not false? Anyway, it says the Broomfield work job was planned long before May 10th, 2020. Well, he knew that he was going to have to repair it long before May 10th, 2020, but it wasn't actually planned. It hadn't been scheduled. And it says the defendants knew the contents of Barry's phone and of the numerous texts dating back to November 2019 with Reed Schwinn communicating about how the wall Barry was contracted to build in Broomfield had a dip in it and needed to be repaired. And that's funny too, because back in the arrest affidavit, Barry told them that he does not remember or know who it was that he was working for that needed him to do the wall, but now he does. The defendants knew from interviews with the company that subcontracted with Barry to fix the dip in the wall, and that it was in the works since November 2019. Being in the works since then is not being scheduled to be done. So, what? He's going to say, oh, I was going to do the job in November 2019. It had been planned since then. They didn't put a date on it at that time. And the date for the job, actually, the job was not lined up for that weekend that he went there. Barry decided to do that. And here we go to where she made an oopsie, because as you know, they've been saying that the defendants knew that Barry had been trying for about a month to determine when the change order would come through. Defendants knew that on May 7th, 2020, Barry was advised by an employee who worked with the general contractor on the job that the change order came through and the materials were supposed to arrive Monday, May 10th, 2020, which is the wrong date too, by the way, to perform corrections on the Broomfield wall. Okay, they're saying that an employee who worked with the contractor told Barry that the change order came through on the 7th. Well, okay, which is 3 days before the 10th. And it's an employee, not a higher up, telling him, okay, the change order's through and here's your stuff going on. It's just kind of... Anyway, furthermore, defendants, etc., knew from emails and receipts that the Holiday Inn in Broomfield, where Barry stayed, was reserved more than a week prior to May 10th. More than a week. He didn't find out from the employee that the order had come in until the 7th. The 7th is 3 days before the 10th, but he reserved the room more than a week before the 10th. And then it goes on. Barry had stayed at the same Holiday Inn in November 2019 when the job was first underway. And guess what? Back then, the room that he asked for this time, it smelled like pool chemicals then too. So to me anyway, that's a very interesting coincidence. And I'm gonna mute because of a cough. Oh my God, Willow. Thank you, Willow. My sis. We're all in this together. We're all standing strong for Suzanne and trying to dispel the untruths that are out there too in this case, and about a few of us YouTubers where they've been putting some false stuff in there. Willow's going to bed. Have good dreams, sis. Love ya. Anyway, and so we know that from this stuff, or we can surmise from this, that this was premeditated because Barry had been working and trying to get this job so that he could go to it, and he was ordering this room a week in advance when he didn't know until 3 days in advance that there was even going to, and then he didn't know for sure because he just heard it from hearsay that the job was going to be okay. And then we know that the stone for the job did not get delivered on the 11th or the 12th or the 13th. It had not been ordered. And so Barry's crew wasn't able to do the wall job, and a different crew came in later and did the job. And then Barry's calls to Suzanne on May 10th, 2023. Defendants who authored the arrest affidavit purposely, knowingly, or recklessly omitted the fact that Barry had telephoned Suzanne at 11:20 a.m. on Sunday, May 10th, 2020, and placed a second text at 3:30 p.m. And then they're saying those are exculpatory. Well, guess what? I happen to know of several cases where people called, texted, and left messages for people that they murdered. To make it look like they didn't know that the person was dead. So that doesn't mean anything that he called or texted her phone. And then it goes into the more complaints about the Bluetooth in the truck and the room and all that stuff that has previously been covered very well by Martin and Kurt, and then also when Martin came on here to explain it as well, that's all explained. And Tom, for some reason, didn't want this information, the telematics and everything that Martin and Kurt had gotten out to everyone. He didn't want it heard, so he had that channel taken down. And why? I'll get into that a little bit later too, because I'm still trying to stay on topic here with Barry's lawsuit and what's going to happen with it. Then it goes 911 call by Ritters. The arrest affidavit states that at approximately 5:58 p.m. on May 10th, CCSB dispatch informed CCSB Deputy Damon Brown that a neighbor, Scott Ritter, actually Martin Ritter, had been told by Barry that he was driving back from Denver and did not have cell service. The arrest affidavit stated that this information was not true, that at that time, in fact, Barry was at his hotel in Broomfield with cell service. And The statement in the arrest affidavit that Barry was in the Broomfield Hotel at 5:58 p.m. was false. Well, we'll have to look at the timestamps and stuff later, but that's interesting, and I'm very interested about all this stuff. Then it mentions that and then it mentions the staging of the tools in the hotel lobby, and they're saying that's false and misleading. It was not staging. Barry brought tools for his workers from his truck into the hotel before he left Broomfield. Barry did this so that his workers who were to arrive later that evening could use the tools to complete the job, because he was leaving the hotel to return to Salida to look for Suzanne. Except for the fact that his workers all said that the tools that he left were not tools that would be used on that job. And so it nitpicks a little bit about that, and about next it moves into omission of evidence that Suzanne's scent was detected in the vicinity of her bike. And of course, her scent would be in the vicinity of her bike because her scent is on her bike, so it would also be around her bike. And what it says is that earlier YouTube replier, they stated that they believed that Suzanne's Range Rover had been used in the commission of a crime, and that this is when they were complaining about the DNA stuff. Hey, Kit. How you doing, sis? Good to see you here. And let's see. Then they go. So then the fact that Suzanne's scent was detected by Roscoe indicated that Suzanne could have been in the area around the bike and down along the creek. And then they're saying this is extremely exculpatory, etc. Except for with Suzanne being found now, we know that it's been proven that the bike ride there didn't happen. And so then they move on to the false statements and material omission of exculpatory evidence about the mileage reading on Barry's truck. And that's stuff that Martin and Kurt covered as well. And we know that there was a lot of wonky stuff with his truck, that he could have been disconnecting it. We also know that he could have used other vehicles. And so none of that really is something I'm going to get into at this point. But also whoever is going to oversee this, once they finish going over all the motions to dismiss and figure out who exactly is going to be left standing as a defendant in this, what of this is even going to be relevant. Anyway, then they go to false and misleading statements about the Broomfield Hotel. The arrest affidavit infers suspicion from the fact that one of Barry's co-workers on the Broomfield job stated that Barry's hotel room smelled of chlorine. The arrest affidavit does not disclose material highly exculpatory information about the hotel room. The arrest affidavit does not include that law enforcement never went to Barry's hotel room or conducted an investigation there. The arrest affidavit does not include that in September of 2020, CBI agent Jason Hibbard and the hotel general manager, Ms. Almeida, emailed each other about the location of the room. The arrest affidavit does not include that Ms. Almeida emailed that room 225 is right above the indoor pool at the hotel, and 4 months later still had a strong pool smell. And and I did a drive there, and I also went in there and smelled the pool, and those scents were there. But the fact the scents were there doesn't indicate guilt or innocence for Barry because guess what? He'd been there before. He knew about the smell, and he did buy a bunch of pool chemicals. And too much of a coincidence in my book, anyway. To me, I think that indicates that he used the pool chemicals that he purchased at the Stove and Spa. I think that he used those to clean stuff up in that hotel room, knowing that the hotel room was going to smell like pool chemicals anyway. So, and then it goes to false and misleading statements attributed to Suzanne. A claim that Suzanne wanted out of the marriage. The arrest affidavit states Suzanne told numerous close friends, her daughters, and Barry that she wanted out of her marriage. And then it says these statements were used to infer motive, that Barry killed Suzanne because she wanted out of the marriage. And then it says the statement's false. And it says Mallory and Macy did not report that Suzanne told them she wanted out of her marriage. But in the arrest affidavit, they have a point where they did talk to the girls, and at least one of them mentioned something very similar to that, as well as the boyfriend also knew that there was trouble, and that, and then it mentions Sheila Oliver said that Suzanne made a statement to that effect, and it says that is not numerous close friends as stated in the arrest affidavit, except for, I believe that there were other close friends besides that maybe Barry doesn't know about. That anyway, then it talks about false statements, Jeff Libler, etc. And then it said suspected blood near the Morphew garage the defense knew was not blood. It was written in there, and it said that that's what made them suspicious at first, is because they thought there was blood, and then of course when the labs finally came back, it wasn't. But that, I don't see a problem with that, because it seemed to be, to me anyway, that it was just explaining what made them be so suspicious. And then false and misleading statements about the investigation of whether Suzanne was still alive. So, they were arguing that she was likely still alive, but now we know that she definitely was not. And so, yeah, they had a big chunk about that, about trying to say that Suzanne could be alive and that they were going after Barry when Suzanne was alive, but she's not. So there's that. And false and misleading statements that Barry knew about Suzanne's affair as a motive for him. And the problem is that you don't really need a motive to try someone for murder. Motive is, it's in all the TV shows and stuff when they talk means, motive, and opportunity and stuff. But really, a lot of times there isn't really a motive. And so them going through all this stuff about motive is kind of something that doesn't need to be said. And then it goes on to say that investigators confirmed that Barry and Ms. Dark did not meet until October 2020. And I wonder if that's true, whether, because I've heard rumors that they met before that. So, and then it mentions that the affidavit devotes almost an entire page to the subject of Ms. Dark. And then it's talking about airplane mode on his phone again. And then false statements about the backhoe, skid steer, bobcat. And defendants knew that the skid steer that Barry owned was not used after 12:34 p.m. on May 9th or on May 10th. They knew it was in no way used or related to any criminal activity. Well, how would they know that it was not used or related to any criminal activity? That's pretty much of a jump anyway. And then it's, talking about the bobcat again. And then they go to false statements about the canine searches, and they talk about how there had been a few different times that dogs were used before the fourth canine search was on May 23rd, and that's when all three canines alerted to the flatbed trailer and Bobcat's skid steer. And so it'll be interesting when if this thing makes it into court. It'll be interesting when they get to question him, because they also, Barry did not blame a turkey for anything. This was another attempt by the defendants, because Barry's response was, if I was out there, the only things I'd be doing might be looking for antlers or turkeys. Well, that's interesting, because semantics, I guess. And Barry blamed the firing of a gun to describe his violence towards Suzanne that afternoon. The statement is false. Barry did not describe any violence towards Suzanne. Barry's statements were in response to the lies that he was being told by the defendants. And there's a whole bunch in there about the lies being told to Barry, and about how Barry changed his story because of the things. Could I repeat that part about Suzanne's vehicle, please? Let me try to. I don't remember how far back that was. I'll try to do that in a community post or something, guys, because I don't know how far back that was. But basically, what it said was that Barry's attorney is complaining that the prosecution had stated that they believed that Suzanne's car had been involved in her disappearance, and yet they didn't complete all the checks on her car before the preliminary, and hadn't gotten that information. And then they complained about the DNA that was found in her car, which, we don't know when that DNA was left in her car or anything like that, and there's no way to say whether it was related to the case. And then they go through semantics again, because they talk about Suzanne's breathing in the morning of May 10th. The arrest affidavit states Barry cannot provide a last sighting of Suzanne. That is false. Barry told defendants that when he woke on the morning of May 10th, 2020 to leave for Broomfield, Suzanne was laying in bed sleeping. Defendants asked Barry if he saw Suzanne under a lump of covers, and he agreed that he did. The arrest affidavit also states that Barry said that when he heard Suzanne in the bed in the morning, she was experiencing labored breathing similar to a snore. This is false. Barry did not say her breathing was labored. Barry describes Suzanne's snoring as a light snore. He said Suzanne had always lightly snored and was doing so on the morning of May 10th. And that's something that they're going to have to talk about. They're complaining about all this. This is all stuff where if this case goes further, Barry's going to have to get on the stand and he's going to have to attest to this. And, if his stories are any different, it's going to be pretty darn bad for him. And knowing what we know now, with Suzanne's remains being found, a lot of what Barry said is not good for him. And then they say that there was a false and misleading statement about Barry taking Suzanne's phone. The arrest affidavit states Barry has admitted that he had taken Suzanne's phone from her at least twice in the past to try to monitor or control what she was doing. This statement is false. The above false statement is material to finding a probable cause. It does. And then it just says that it doesn't say what the truth is or anything like that. And we know that Suzanne herself mentioned that he took her phone, and we know that I was reading the arrest affidavit not too long ago, and he stated that she would give him her phone because he was suspicious of her and wanted to see her phone. Then we go to failure to train and supervise. Now, that might be something. It's the first time there might be something that people might be found guilty of. Failure to train and supervise. Defendants Stanley and Spacey, acting in their official capacities, it says that they tacitly approved of the defendant's misconduct by retaining their employment, failing to train and discipline them, and participating in the misconduct as supervisors. Well, then again, maybe not. So basically what they would have to do is first they would have to prove that there was misconduct, and then they would have to prove that Stanley and Spacey knew that there had been misconduct, and then they would have to prove that Stanley and Spacey, at first I thought that maybe that would be something that would be easily determined, but not so good now, because they would have to prove these things. And then they say the misconduct the defendants committed against Barry Morphew is part of an official custom, policy, or practice, and it was undertaken with the authorization, approval, and ratification of CCSD, EJDAO, final policymakers, and defendants Linda Stanley and John Spacey. So, like I said, that's like saying that there had to have been a plan, and there doesn't appear to be a plan, really. So, and then they go to reckless investigation, and they say that there was numerous investigative leads that they did not pursue, and it says defendants did not follow up on the CODIS DNA matches. They did follow up on them, and they just didn't do it in a timely fashion. Defendants did not interview Libler's friends or family. Defendants did not collect and search Libler's computers. Defendants did not search Libler's home or car. But Libler was not in. Okay, whatever. Defendants obtained some of Libler's phone records from Verizon, but only from 2019 to December 2020. Why would we need them from further back? Anyway, defendants who authored the arrest affidavit stated they received from Libler screenshots showing Costco receipts in Michigan on May 7th and 9th and 11th, but failed to report that those receipts were on his wife's account, not Libler's. But guess what? The affidavit did not say Costco. It said Menards, which is a hardware store there. So that's weird. The defendant prosecutor's timetable was based on political concerns and motivations and public pressure, not an adequate investigation. Further acts and omissions demonstrating a reckless investigation are described through this complaint, incorporated here by reference. And then it says, conspiracy by all co-defendants. From May 2020 to present, all defendants met with each other and or communicated by telephone, email, in-person conversations and meetings, and numerous other forms of communications. Defendants individually and in a conspiracy with the other defendants maliciously and purposely withheld exculpatory information from the judge and the defense. So, yeah. Like I said, the lawsuit is saying that all this was done on purpose and to defame and all this other stuff, when if Linda Stanley is deemed just negligent and not purposefully doing whatever from her thing, well, then this isn't going to be able to say that she purposely did anything. And then there goes the conspiracy, because, you know, she's the main part of what they're saying is a conspiracy here. And then they go on and basically their whole complaint is about the arrest affidavit and all that. Oh, I see the word Range Rover. Okay, it wasn't until after the... Okay, it says the Range Rover download expert sent the download data to the defendants. The defendants had the data and did not produce the data. Upon receiving the email in late January 2022, the defense learned of this Range Rover download expert and demanded the defendants produce the data. The defendants produced the data after another court order in March of 2022. There was no event data produced similar to what was produced with Barry's truck, doors opening and closing, blah, blah, blah. And that is because Range Rovers don't do that kind of information. And so, and then they say dismissal of charges, and they say all charges against Barry were dismissed on April 19th, 2022, but they don't say without prejudice, but they're using that to further make their case that this was some sort of malicious thing against Barry. And then the final chunk of it, these are pages 141 to 185. They complain about the continued withholding of Barry's property. And it says Mr. Morphew's property was seized in or around 2020. The property includes all items of physical evidence taken from the Morphew home as part of the law enforcement investigation into the disappearance of Suzanne Morphew. They have been in possession of Barry Morphew's property for over 2 years. The items have been photographed, swab tested, and if applicable, downloaded. There is no link between the property to the location or circumstances of Mrs. Morphew's disappearance. The paper documents have been copied and preserved. The electronic items, including SD cards, have been removed and copied or downloaded by the prosecution's purported experts. And they talk about rifles, and then they say that about that inoperable one. It says Mr. Morphew does not request the return of that item. And then The damages, he says that he was charged and arrested and prosecuted and his property seized for a crime that he did not commit. But what if he did? What if, what if he did? It's an ongoing investigation. So, how can they make this document say it's for a crime he didn't commit? And then, and so then what they say, their claims now, that was just all the fluff. And then the claims for relief, claim 1 is Bivens case, and it's malicious prosecution and unlawful detention as one of his charges. And I don't know how he's going to prove that it was malicious. And claim 2, the due process, fabrication of evidence. And it says by authoring the affidavit and stuff. So that's some technical stuff that I don't really know, but we'll see what happens with that. And then Bivens Frank's claim, defendant who authored the arrest affidavit. Let's see. Due process. Oh, okay. They're just saying that they're mad about the affidavit and stuff. And then the claim 4 is a conspiracy for all the defendants. And claim 5, unlawful retention of property. Well, it's an ongoing investigation, and it's been stated that it's an ongoing investigation. And so that's still part of the ongoing investigation, which is taking place in District 12 instead of District 11. So, yeah. And then failure to intervene for all defendants. They're claiming that all of them are in trouble for not stopping the others from doing whatever they did. And reckless investigation. And then the claim 8 is that the final policymakers had an unconstitutional official policy and failure to supervise and train, and they are doing that against the Board of Commissioners of Chaffee County and stuff like that. And claim 9, malicious prosecution state law, and claim 10, fabrication of evidence, from state law, because they're doing federal and state laws on all of this. False and misleading information in arrest warrant affidavit, unlawful seizure, and then it's all padding. It's all the same thing written over and over again. And so, yeah. So there's all that. And then, the workers folded up the job in Broomfield due to not having the materials. And so there's all that. And there's still a bunch of outstanding motions to dismiss. The ones that have already been seen, that they made motions to dismiss, and then it was dismissed against those people. And so I'm not even sure whether this is going to make it to court at all. But if it does make it to court, it's going to be very interesting, because this has really pigeonholed Barry in to a timeline and stuff like that. And anything that he testifies to, anything that is found out in this, can be used if he's charged in the 12th Judicial for murdering Suzanne, and her remains were found over there. And anything that he says, anything, it becomes record, and it can be used. So, he's really, like shot himself in the foot or whatever by filing this. And I can see why everyone was so glad that he filed this. I mean, of course, the Barry lovers are glad that he filed it because they think he's going to get $15 million. But the rest of us were excited because we knew that he was going to have to testify and he was going to have to go on record, and that he could really basically be signing his own, I don't know, what do you call it, a prison warrant or whatever. Say, okay, just take me away now. And yeah, YouTube replier, I think it will die from the motions to dismiss, because I've read the motions to dismiss and they are really good, really solid. They have the precedences, they have, they've cited case law and all that, and it would really surprise me if it does go any further than just stirring up a lot of people. And yeah, Barry's fanatics. And now I jumped away from all the paperwork, and I will just go on to, or back to some of the stuff that's going on with all of this and the misinformation that's been given to the public, and how news agencies even got a hold of information and ran with it, and were spreading like false information because of, they saw it in print someplace else, and so they took it and ran with it, using that as their reference, when the original is, like coming from this fellow Tom, who I don't understand his motivation here, because some people were like, oh well, it's his motivation because he wants Stanley out of office. He wants Stanley. Well, everybody wants Stanley out of office. Okay, so what on earth would taking AK's channel down have to do with Stanley? What on earth would be tarnishing my name, Kurt's name, Martin's name? What does that have to do with Linda Stanley? And what did that have to do with the charges that Stanley is facing? Nothing. It had nothing to do with us. You were not part of that. So what exactly would be the motivation there? It did no good for the Stanley thing, and running it that way was really strange. Like, I asked one of the reporters that was in the room, and I said, was a whole lot of this like bringing up what I said or my petition or anything like that, because I didn't get called and Kurt didn't get called. And so it's like, were we a big part of this? And it's like, no, it's about Stanley and Stanley's things that she did. And then it's like, well, then why did the news reports name us and say, oh, this YouTuber and this one, they made all these problems and all this, and and then it got reported. But I'm seeing now that rather than, and yeah, and there's another one. Why does that man steal pictures of children, and what does that have to do with Stanley? Exactly. I think that was more like intimidation instead, to go and get pictures of Kurt's kids and share it and spread around to show that they had it or whatever. I don't know, but what does that have to do with Stanley? Nothing. And it's just, it's really bad. And it makes me very, well, it makes me angry, of course, but it also makes me very curious as to why, what is his motivation? What do we have to do with this problem? And yeah, the Tom guy's been stalking me for a long time now. And my husband said that I should let my audience know that if anything did happen to me, that people should look at Tom first, because this is just really sick stuff. And I don't even want to get into that part of it, but just to say that I don't understand what his motivation is, because he's gone way beyond just filing charges against Stanley. He's gone way beyond that, and he's made allegations, serious allegations, that aren't actually being looked into either. I mean, well, let's go with this one. He is saying that Kurt and I conspired with Linda Stanley against the judge. Okay, now that's a serious allegation to make against somebody, but why? It's not. It's a serious allegation, and I'm interested to see what Ramsey Lama went and testified to in court. Whether he told the truth or whether he also went overboard with this stuff. Because if he was telling lies, that's some pretty serious stuff too. And the thing is, there was no conspiracy with Linda Stanley. I wrote my petition as a reaction to Ramsey Lama stating that there could be no mention of domestic abuse in the trial against Barry. And I felt that that was, like putting a gag on Suzanne herself, because that would mean that her statements couldn't be brought in there. There could be no testimony regarding domestic abuse and what domestic abuse is. They wouldn't be able to have an expert in there to explain to the jury the different things that are domestic abuse, because a lot of people think that it's just getting punched and stuff like that. They don't realize that it's control. It's watching your wife's every move, tracking her on the phone, having cameras up around the house to keep an eye on her, tracking her down like Barry did, sneaking through the woods and sneaking up to the house, scaring the crap out of her so that she called 911 because she thought there was an intruder, but it's just you, and stuff like that. That's, and handling all the money and only giving her an allowance, not allowing her to have any plastic or anything like that. That's financial control, and like telling her that that she needs to just continue be the way she's been in the past, and everything will be fine. That if she wants to grow or do anything on her own, then you're gonna discontinue her cancer treatments, you're gonna discontinue her health insurance. That's abusive. That's and yes, it got reported. They got pictures of Kurt's kids, and his youngest kid. His other kids are adults, but he's got a young one, and they did that, and they've spread rumors about Kurt that are just very untrue. Anybody that knows Kurt knows that they're not true, but still they're hurtful, especially to people, because there are people that don't know him and just will assume that they're true. And that's, very messed up. But anyway, somehow the day that I published that petition, Linda Stanley saw that petition and shared it with her prosecutorial team and said that she wanted to look into Ramsey Lama to see whether he had bias or something. And it just I didn't give it to her. I don't know where she got it. I don't know if they even went over whether who gave it to her. But anyway, she saw it and she ran with it. And I don't think that it was really a big stretch to do what she did regarding that, but I do think she should have. I forgot the name of it now, but I found out that there is a judicial review board that is who oversees judges, and I also found out that having a physical impairment or illness or something that makes it difficult for you to sit on the bench and stuff, that those are reasons for a judge to step down. So Ramsey Lama did step down right after the Morphew case, and he cited his previous injury and the fact that he was on painkillers and stuff, that he has chronic pain now, and all this stuff, which tells me that he was having chronic pain during the Morphew thing too, and that he was having to take medication for that pain. And it makes me wonder if he had all his faculties about him at the time. Should he even have been on the bench? Which goes back to, somebody needed to be looking into Ramsey Lama at the time, and obviously the person was not Linda Stanley. It needed to be the higher ups, the people that oversee judges. But I didn't know who oversaw judges, and that's why I just made my petition saying, somebody look at this. That he needed to be reviewed. And but then that gets blown up into that I was working with Linda Stanley, that there was this conspiracy, etc. And there has never been a conspiracy. Kurt and I both are dedicated to justice for Suzanne, and all we've ever wanted was justice for Suzanne. And we both exposed wrongdoing on both sides of the aisle, from the Iris and Linda Stanley, because we're about shining a light on the truth. And we don't have any political aspirations or anything like that. We're not, it's just crazy. And, and so, that's all weird. And it's got me looking back at, this document that Tom has out there, and the allegations that he's made, and these news reports that are skewed, and got me to go look at them again to try to figure out what the motivation is, because if anything, it distracted from the whole Linda Stanley was doing things wrong or anything like that. And it is just things to make you go, because then there's looking at the different, like at the beginning of this, I read to you 2 different articles, and one was omitting the fact that Barry could be tried again, and it seemed to be a little bit skewed toward the Barry camp, and the other was a very impartial one. And then there are other publications that go to the point where they are very far into the Barry camp, or eating or drinking the Kool-Aid from Iris, and one of those is that Wet Mountain Tribune, which other publications went and picked up, which was saying these things that were word for word stuff from Tom's Google document, where he's like some kind of crazy conspiracy theorist, and in his Google doc, he what did he say about Kurt? I forget exactly, but one of the things he said about Kurt is that Kurt is like Charles Manson, and he called me a cult leader, or I don't know, but it's just all really kind of crazy out there stuff. And it just concerns me when I see this stuff repeated by media, like by the print media, and going, oh, okay, where's the fairness, where's the impartiality, where's the checking with the people that are being talked about and named, because it didn't just say a YouTuber or anything like that. It had our names. And yeah, crazy business. So anyhow, I guess I'll be wrapping this up and talk to you again sometime. And please be thinking of any questions that you have that you want me to go through, because I have the affidavit, I've got the lawsuit, I've got all the documents. I can look it up. I enjoy research, and we'll stay on top of this. We'll make sure that there is justice for Suzanne by keeping the story out in the public. Let know that there's interest and that people want Suzanne to have justice. We don't want this brushed under the rug. And really, it would do a total disservice if we weren't allowed to talk about the domestic abuse situation that was going on in the Morphew marriage, because so many other people can benefit from seeing the warning signs, or seeing it and go and go, oh, I need to get out of a bad situation before it gets worse. And another thing that everybody needs to know is that it gets really bad when the victim decides to leave, and you have to be really careful at that point. And Suzanne was at that point. She had told Barry that she was done, and within days she was unaccounted for, only to be found years later in a shallow grave with BAM, the deer tranquilizer, in her system. So thank you, everybody. And I love you guys. And I will see you in the next one, which, I will have a next one. Love you.